Hello, Thomas. How's it going?
Hello, Timony, and hello, Jason. It's great to be back. As usual, I love Monday nights for this reason. I know it's Monday morning for you, but I love Monday nights. Look, what a great way to start the week. You hear about people saying, well, they hear this story of this, and it's actually true that more people die of heart attacks on a Monday than any other day of the week. Well, we're here with our white magic, our magic to undo that spell of people having heart attacks on Mondays.
Yeah, that's right. We've already been busy today. We recorded a symposium this morning, so we'll have that up for you guys probably this evening or tomorrow afternoon for some of you guys. So yeah, no, it's a great way. I love how busy our Mondays have become with, doing two shows, and it is the most fantastic way to start off the week. And thank you everybody for showing up all the time and being supportive and blowing up the comments. It's always awesome.
Yeah, and again, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters and subscribers, whatever you call them. We're definitely really appreciative of that, and we're putting that to good use right now. We've got a couple shorts coming at you, actually a series of whole short films coming at you here real soon, and we've been putting out a few things, as well as possibly a new series, Thomas.
Yes, well,
you already premiered that one. Yeah, you already premiered the book.
The new series is the book show.
Yep. Sorry, I forgot we already put that one out there. So you guys have already seen the book reviews. But yeah, so you want to go ahead and start off with our first story?
This one is local to us where we are living right now, and it just was printed day before yesterday. It says, is the Columbia River Gorge a supernatural hotbed? The boundaries between worlds are reportedly very thin at sunrise and sunset on the Rowena Plateau. Have you had a supernatural experience in the Columbia River Gorge? In radio ads and storefront signs, folks in the gorge are being encouraged to file paranormal reports at Margie's Outdoor Store in Benin, Washington. Supernatural occurrences have always been a part of life in the gorge, but now they are on the rise and for good reason, said James Spooky, Chief Operations Manager of Margie's Outdoor Store. Tracking these events has become more important than ever, so Margie's has signed on to help gather information for our local warden and protector. The gorge has a rich tradition of local ghost stories, legends, and odd occurrences. This is not the first time that paranormal occurrences in the gorge have been brought to the public's attention. As recently as last April, unexplained cow mutilations in Wasco County left ranchers scratching their heads, and Mount Adams has long been considered the site of a UFO hangar. There was even a movie produced about it last year. CCC News sat down with James Spooky to get the full scoop. Cool, good one. Tell us a little about yourself and how you came to the gorge. Margie was my mother-in-law and an incredible woman. She was a single grandmother in her 60s when she opened the very first legal pot shop on the West Coast. As a pharmacist registered in 4 states, she was certainly clear-headed about real-world affairs. Margie was also a spiritual woman with many unusual acquaintances. Sadly, Margie passed away last March. The family needed someone to step up and run her businesses. That task fell to me. I have a lot of business experience, so running the store was a natural fit, but my real passion is in adventuring. Before I turned 20, I was a decorated infantry soldier with a 199 Special Battalion, an experimental unit stationed up at Fort Lewis. I spent time fighting wildfires in Yellowstone back in '88, and I've logged hundreds of hours as a mountain guide. Now I am a nationally certified EMT and do volunteer search and rescue work. Okay, you have a wide range of experiences. It has been an interesting and very strange journey. Does that include the paranormal? You can't spend that much time on the far edges of normal life and not have profoundly unusual experiences, especially when you've been trained to open your awareness to the paranormal. Is there anything about the gorge that makes it especially prone to the supernatural? My God, yes. The landscape of the gorge was literally carved by cataclysm. 15 million years ago, wave after wave of fiery lava flowed across the region, forming the unique layer cake rock formations that we see today. Then 15,000 years ago, 400-foot deep floods scoured the path of the Columbia River. These floods tore through the rock and left behind the stunning column cliffs and waterfalls that make the gorge so unique and beautiful. The result of these apocalyptic events is that in the gorge, the boundaries between worlds have been worn very thin. Strange things manifest here quickly and easily. Here, it is easy for folks to inadvertently stumble into other realms, often without even being aware that they have left their everyday world behind. I've often felt there was something special about this area. There is strong energy movement in the gorge. Anyone who can quiet their mind for a few moments can feel it. That energy is reflected in the powerful flow of the Columbia River and the constant push of the winds. The rushing trains on both the north and south banks and the flow of car traffic on the highways contribute as well. All this is concentrated in a very tight physical corridor, and all of it reinforces the east-west current of energy flowing through this place. It's very strong, and it definitely impacts the folks who spend time here. So how does this energy affect us? The people who live here are constantly exposed to the flow of energy. It's on 24/7 and has been churning away for thousands of years. This makes gorge locals more prone to slipping between worlds. This explains why so many of the local old-timers who come into Margie's outdoor stores have stories to tell about encountering Sasquatch or seeing lights or even losing time in the wilderness. For visitors to the gorge, this situation is different. They come to the gorge from normal places and they dive into the super-saturated supernatural soup. Many quickly get the sense that there is something magical going on here, something they can feel but can't quite explain. Away from home and away from the blinders of their standard routines, they are more open to strange experiences. This is why we are encouraging both natives and visitors to file paranormal reports at the store in Benin. Both perspectives offer important data points. Why is it important to gather this data? The world is changing fast. Extreme weather events and earth changes are accelerating. Those changes have corresponding impacts in the paranormal realms. Sensitive places like the gorge will be among the first to witness emerging paranormal phenomena. I'm not sure I understand. Many people don't know that all the changes we are seeing in the world are coinciding with dramatic changes to the Earth's magnetic field. The field is weakening and the poles are rapidly changing position. In fact, the magnetic North Pole has already moved out of Canada and will soon be in Siberia. So what does this have to do with paranormal phenomena? The Earth's magnetic fields shield us from huge amounts of solar energy. As our shield weakens, the Earth itself and everything living on it must absorb that energy. Parallel processes are occurring in the paranormal realms. As these systems get supercharged, strange things have started to happen, inexplicable things. Because the gorge is such a supernaturally sensitive area, we will see those things here first, long before the rest of the world sees them. That's why it is important to track what is going on here in real time. The gorge is the canary in a coal mine. What do you do with the data you collect from your reports? We are doing this at the request of the local warden and protector. He is a friend of the family and has been trying to track the accelerating changes in the paranormal realms. We receive the reports in the store and then pass them on to him. Soon Margie's outdoor store will be posting a large map in the store showing the locations of many of the paranormal occurrences. And are you getting a lot of reports? It was slow at first, but now they are really starting to pour in. Thank you for sharing this with us. And there you have it, the full scoop on paranormal reporting at Margie's outdoor store. Whether or not you are a believer in the impossible, if you've had a paranormal experience in the gorge, be sure to get on down to Margie's outdoor store and file your report. So right when we were filming for Sasquatch, when Jason and I went to do our filming, we were in Skamania, which is right in the middle of the gorge. And we had some really wild experiences there. I've been driving through the gorge for the past 20 something years. And I can tell you that everything that this man is talking about is absolutely true. It is a complete world between worlds. It's beautiful and stunning, but there's just that slippage that's there and you can just feel it.
That's the Environomicon. That's the enchanted landscape, the whole thing. It's right there. That was a very well written article. That's one of the best articles you've read out on the week in Strange since the show began. It was really well written and researched. Unusual for, what was the source of the article? Was it a newspaper?
Let me show you. It was from the Columbia Community Connection. So a pretty standard run of the mill, they print stuff like agriculture and yeah.
And yet a very high standard of journalism there. That was very high in terms of reporting paranormal stuff or Fortean stuff. That was an extremely high level of journalism. Yeah, I mean, I'm always amazed by, that's the whole thing. That the cataclysmic earth represents the cataclysms of mankind, the consciousness, the enchanted landscape. There's a fantastic book I read about that called about that recently. And the idea of the Environomicon, which I came up with, that you can strange the landscape into another reality. It's the same. It's a very similar concept, but I find it very interesting how these river valleys are in the US and North America are associated with these kinds of phenomena. You have, you just mentioned that one, right? You have the Ohio Valley between West Virginia and Ohio, Point Pleasant, the Mothman. Now, before the Mothman started up, there was endless UFOs sightings there. John Keel writes about. You have the Indian Point in the Hudson Valley. They all seem to be steep-sided gorges with deep rivers, and then they with natural landscapes full of trees, and they seem to produce these phenomena. It's terribly interesting stuff.
Yeah, and as we were talking about on the previous show today, we had Gary Vasey on, and we were talking a little bit about the Environomicon and energy lines. And here in the Tri-Cities, we've talked about this so many times on the show, but that Columbia River, as well as the Yakima River and the Snake River, are three rivers that combine together. So there's an energetic charge here in Richland, right off of the Columbia. And like we're saying, the Hanford site where they did the creating the plutonium, the enriched uranium for the bomb project, was right here off of this river. And then the experience that we had over there in Skamania too, while we were filming Sasquatch, we had our own paranormal encounter where we were trying to find this rock. I want to say it's called Beacon Rock. And when we were looking for this, we drove by it, and it's right there off the side of the road, about like not even 5 miles from the Airbnb we were staying at. And we left in the evening to try to find it, and we drove around forever just trying to find it. It's like we slipped through into a different time space, and ended up, the GPS on my phone, on both of our phones, ended up saying that we were like 4 hours away from it at one point. And then like the little thing that tracks your car, it went all over the place and said we were someplace like off to the west, really far from it. And we ended up, I want to say we lost a little bit of time through the whole thing, right? So that's where you're watching the part of the Sasquatch where Timothy's saying it's about 3 a.m. and we're playing out the sound, the recording from it. That was after we'd been driving around trying to find this fucking rock, because that's where we wanted to shoot that scene from, and we just couldn't find it. So it's like, well, let's find a place that works, that's got some trees in the background, and we'll put you in front of the headlight so there's a little bit of light. So, but we looked around, and it was supposed to be like a quick 5-minute drive to that rock. Yeah, we spent like 2.5 hours trying to find it, and sure enough, we did a pretty good scene for Sasquatch, but it wasn't where we wanted to film it. And so it was just we went around all over the place and found something that worked. But yeah, I don't know what that was. I don't know if we slipped into a different reality construct or something, but that's what it felt like. And we had a number of strange occurrences.
All the power went out in the little, we were staying in Bonneville. By the time we got back to the Airbnb, all the power in the neighborhood had gone out, and was out for several hours. Yeah, there was a number of things.
Yeah, the power went out, and then
that footage you sent me, I was full of energy. That one with Timmy on the camera, and I have the raw footage that you sent me just from your regular camera, and that was that before I even edited that down, it was apparent that there was some kind of like high energy involved in that moment.
Yeah, and it was just like she said, we got back to the Airbnb and the power was out, and our hosts were. They might be watching the show, but yeah, our hosts were there, and they were really, really accommodating to us. And it was nice. They had a hot tub there, and we got to hang out in the hot tub because it was freezing cold outside. And just like, oh, hot tub will keep us warm while the power's off in the house. But it was great though, that whole experience. It was we went there, and like Timothy was saying, there was the power, and then there's also the batteries on our devices that got drained, both on the phone, the gimbal, and our camera. This wasn't at the same location, but there's another place along the gorge where we went to do some of the filming on the first day that we were there, and just everything got drained out of all the devices. And she found this really cool bone on the ground that's upstairs, and it was right there in our path. And as soon as it wasn't there on our way out, but when we came back out, it was like a shoulder blade bone out of some kind of deer or something, I would say. We found that bone, and it was right there where the power went out. So we had a number of just, I guess you can consider them Fortean experiences, paranormal experiences along the gorge. And like they were saying, if you have any kind of stories along here, put stories about the along the Columbia River Valley Gorge, just put them down in the comments if you have anything that occurred to you. I'm sure there are other people watching and listening that live in this area. I know, Rhett, we shared this with you, and Luis, if you and your buddies over there at the tattoo shop have any stories about anything that happened here along the gorge, just please drop them in the comments or put them here on Facebook. But yeah, just it's a really magical place. And right here in the Tri-Cities we're on, I want to say there's probably 3 energy lines that converge. So again, like if anybody around here has any information about that, we'd love to hear about it.
And 10 out of 10 to the journalist for writing that article. That was one of the best yet. I've noticed in general that any articles regarding 40 and stuff lately has not been as patronizing and as insulting as it used to be. You know, the days when they would start the article, say if someone was reported with UFO in an area, and they would start the article off by saying, you know, some people believe they've seen Elvis in a spaceship come down. You know, that seems to have all stopped now. Like the recent UFO flap we had around here, some friends of mine were cited. One friend of mine was quoted in the national newspaper, the Irish Mirror, and the article was like, it was respectful. You know, it's like, I've noticed that's been going on for a while. It's like the whole tone of how paranormal and fun and 40 events are now being reported in the mainstream media has definitely come a long way than even was 5 years ago.
Yeah, they're definitely not as condescending in the, you know, it's not being made a mockery of as much.
Yeah, I think because the people who are studying, people like us, are much more serious. And where in the past, like I can give you an example, there was a big UFO flap around here about 20 years ago in the Curlew Mountains. And two lads were investigating it, and like the hearts were in the right place and everything. And they claimed that it was members of the U.S. Air Force had arrived in the mountains, and it was a whole thing. It was every cliche in the book. They'd obviously been watching too many X-Files episodes, and their book is terrible. It's awful. It's every cliche in the book. And they got slagged off in the media and all this kind of things, like, you know, that condescending way, you know, did Elvis appear and stuff like that. But because I think people like us are now talking about it, they know not to fuck with us, you know, that kind of a thing, that shit doesn't fly. Right. Yeah, and they've even the mainstream journalists have figured out, okay, these people are not as thick as we'd like them to be. And I find that very interesting how that's all changed.
And there's not as many things like COINTELPRO going on anymore. You know, those CIA operations that were designed to take a lot of this information. And, you know, back then, you know, in what, the 60s and 70s, when COINTELPRO was a thing, that was designed to take information like this and the media do a tremendous amount of social engineering to get people to not look at it. You know, I say that now, and, you know, who knows, there might be a new version of COINTELPRO that comes out here soon that puts like a woke layer over everything to render it inert. But it's not going to work. Yeah, it's not going to work.
Well, I have a theory that Project Bluebeam is probably the ping pong virus. And the reaction around that, but I also do believe the ping pong virus, you know, we're talking about, is also an alien invasion too.
Yep.
So it's like it's the real thing, but also an intervention to make it something else. Because I think if you look at the U.S. Navy reports on UFOs and the basic coverage of them in the United States now, there's an element of like, we don't know what they are. They're starting to finally admit it. You know, they were very happy when people believed they were spacemen coming from other planets. But when the sort of like the esoteric part of it started picking up and taking off, and that's been around for a very long time, since the 1940s, actually. As you know, we know that Marjorie Cameron Parsons' moonchild mother, Babylon, yeah, she was one of the first people in the United States to ever report a UFO to the officials. And that's phenomenal. And then you get Carl Jung, the father of psychoanalysis, but you know, the collective conscious. He wrote a book about it in the 40s. So we've come back full circle. We've come back home. You know, so we had like 60 or 70 years of pure nonsense, distortion, COINTELPRO, obstrusification. But now we've come back full circle. And I know that these journalists, when they interview us, and I've actually done a few shows over the years where there was someone who a bit like, it was ready to go condescending with me. And, you know, I tore them a new one with like, and I could sense it. And I tore them a new one. By the end, they were saying, okay, that's very interesting. So I think we've become very good at communicating because we've jumped away from the cliches.
Yeah, that and our consistency.
Consistency. And we're also not defending ourselves. It's like, and we also don't say it's definitely this and it's definitely that.
Nope.
We say we don't know, but it does exist. And lo and behold, this is what the US Navy now says.
Right.
And the British Ministry of Defense. That's what they now say. Yeah.
Yep. I need some help from the audience for a second. If you guys think that I should try and get this guy on the show, can everybody put a thumbs up? That would be awesome.
Yeah, we should definitely get him on the show. I think there was one comment from someone saying that we should get that author of this article on the show for sure. Get him on the symposium. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. All right. See all those thumbs. There's a little bit of a lag here. I think we're 15 seconds ahead of the live stream.
We're going to bounce this over to the guy once it's done.
Yes. And then, okay, so where I wanted to go with all that too is this whole thing with blocking out the interesting stuff that we do. It's also like when people were doing this kind of thing, they tended to be pushing an agenda, and we're not pushing an agenda. We're not out there saying that it's definitely this one thing or it's definitely the other. We have many topics that we speak about. We're not just talking about aliens. We're not just talking about, hauntings. We're not just talking about certain things. We come at things from a very look at all those thumbs up. Thank you.
Yeah, and it was also a kind of almost a religious element to it. It's like, the aliens are coming and they're going to bring world peace and they're going to bring us into the fifth dimension and all this nonsense, and,
yep.
and that's why Whitley Strieber's communion book is so unbelievably important. It doesn't get the credit because he took it from on a popular level, he took it to the dreamscape world. He really did. And I'll be forever grateful for him for writing that book, and there was other stuff like the ballet and stuff for people like that were writing tremendous books beforehand, but they didn't reach a mass audience. I think he played a huge part. And I think shows like the X-Files were an attempt by the CIA to bring it back to the alien world. They were trying to own the paranormal again, but they didn't really. It's back out into the world of high strangeness. Yep.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, if we get this guy to agree, we should do an on-site symposium with him. And
sounds great.
Yeah. So we'll get him. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for the thumbs ups. All right. So next.
Yeah, thank you for that. As soon as this is all edited and rendered or whatever, I'm going to send this over to him in an email and so he can see that we're serious. So thank you guys. So serious. Okay. Okay. Eerie box marked "Do Not Release" found during home renovation project. A spooky video circulating online reveals the unsettling contents of an eerie box that was discovered during a home renovation project and bears the worrisome warning, "Do not release." The chilling footage was posted to TikTok by a couple who have been showcasing some of the strange finds they have made while refurbishing a house from the 1920s, which they purchased at an auction last year. The wildly popular series has seen them discover a hidden room and other odd objects within the residence. And recently, while fixing a brick wall, they unearthed a rather peculiar box with the words inscribed. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's in a different language, but it translates to "Do not release," along with a pentagram inscribed on the side. Shortly thereafter, the homeowners say they noticed a rattling sound coming from a mirror in the home, and upon smashing the glass to see what was making the noise, they found a curious key. As luck would have it, the discovery allowed them to open the ominous box, and of course, the big moment was captured on film for the world to see. In the video, one of the homeowners can be seen unlocking the small wooden container and lifting the lid to reveal what they rightly described as a really strange object. Specifically, the box contained a necklace, what appears to be a burnt Ouija board planchette, and a lock of hair. The story behind the unnerving package is matter of speculation, with some suggesting that the objects were part of some kind of ritual and that the homeowners may have wound up cursing themselves by opening the forbidden box. Others have argued that perhaps the items were placed there by the previous residents as part of an elaborate prank aimed at the next family to occupy the house. And skeptical viewers have argued that the serialized nature of the homeowner's story, which now includes the discovery of a second key for a yet-to-be-found box, suggests that it may all be a well-crafted hoax. Should that be the case, it's been a wildly successful venture as their videos have amassed over 100 million viewers over the past few weeks. With that in mind, what's your take on the footage?
Well, that could be any of those things, couldn't it? Really, it could be a hoax, a mind fuck, a bit of fun, or it could be something real. In rural Ireland, in provincial Ireland, not in the towns, I'd say, there's a tradition of. This is an interesting one. You'll like this. There's a tradition of the bad room. Some houses have a bad room in them, where you can't go into them because they're considered They're considered haunted or not pleasant. There's an element of evil in them. Now, there's one house just up the road here in a very nice terrace of Victorian provincial Irish architecture houses, about 6 of them in a row, very attractive buildings. And there's one in the middle of the terrace. My friend grew up just up down 2 houses away from it, told me that there's the downstairs room facing the living room, what they call the parlor here. They used to call it the parlor. It's bricked off because they used to, if you put furniture in there, it gets destroyed overnight by a poltergeist effect. So they got so frightened of the entity or whatever it was in there that they bricked up the wall. So you can't actually physically enter the room anymore. The only way you can get into it is opening the window and crawling in that way. But but that's quite common in provincial Ireland. The bad room where wickedness takes place, evil forces are. And I lived in an apartment in Woodside, New York, that was like that. There was a room that had a terrible, the cats would not go into it. And it had a beautiful apartment building, and a beautiful apartment I had, like it was from the 1920s, and with like parquet floor, it was gorgeous, but it was in a kind of a rundown neighborhood, so I got it cheap. And but the one room I could have this horrible energy about it, horrible. And that box could be the microcosmic version of that. I do wonder if they're not being taking the piss out of us and it is a real paranormal thing, that could be that, something like that.
Yeah, agreed. And this is coming, that article was from Coast to Coast, so I don't think they were messing around with us at all. But yeah, it's that, or there's like double boxes and gin jars and things like that, where if this had a Ouija board planchette in it and a lock of hair, perhaps it was something like, when people mess around with spirit boards and stuff, they're using themselves as the conduit, right? They're not using the actual board itself. They're opening themselves up to be the conduit for whatever entity. So there could have been at one point, somebody had opened up a portal within themselves, and that person who had that portal open, that was their hair and their Ouija board planchette, perhaps, and that was locked away, and it was sealed with a pentagram or pentacle, perhaps. Yeah, don't open kind of thing.
There's a soliloquy of a demon written by Isaac Bashevis. Isaac Bashevis Singer, I think his name is. He's a Jewish a writer. He's like a James Joyce type writer, and he writes a story about a demon living in a bookcase in Poland, and it has witnessed the destruction of the Jewish community by the Nazis, and it's left there lamenting being a demon, just being. Ivis Bashevis Singer is the name of the writer, fantastic writer. But the demon lives in an old cabinet in a formerly Jewish ghetto that was where everyone had been exterminated by the Nazis, and now the Gentiles have moved there, and he's a Jewish demon, so he cannot relate to the Gentiles. And it reminds me of something like that he dreads when the drawer is open and he's revealed, and it reminds me so much of that, like that there was a demon in the cabinet that addressed the drawers or wherever it was he lived in. So I found that interesting because his father was a rabbi and a Kabbalist, and therefore he had an insight into this kind of stuff. And he was probably aware that the same neuroses and the idiosyncratic mentality that humans have, also demons have regarding us. So, it could all, you think about it, the idea of like, protecting it. He called it a demon, but it was an entity, whatever. But, the idea that there could be something in there, and the reason why the box is closed is for the protection of the entity. We never think about that, but that's when I read that Ivis Bashevis Singer story about, I think it's called Confessions of a Demon, it really made me think about what their consciousness was like,
When you were saying that, I was also thinking too that perhaps they used that Ouija board planchette and that lock of that person's hair to try to communicate with that person. So like if they, they had a dead relative and they'd I'm putting air quotes, had communicated with them, that that's some kind of binding where they're like, okay, we have a way of talking to Aunt Sally or whatever through her lock of hair in this particular Ouija board planchette that had been burned, which again I think is interesting, that something must have went wrong and the Ouija board got burnt. And
one more addition, right? And this is in the tradition of the weak and strange. even if that was someone in the 1920s having a laugh and taking a piss of people discovering in the future, it's still a profoundly paranormal experience, because we've created a mystique around an object that, even though it was put out there for a laugh, it has become, the mystique has become real.
Yeah.
Agreed. I just saw a funny story the other day of somebody, I think they were in the Carolinas somewhere, and they were tearing apart their deck to make a new deck, and they got a plastic skeleton and buried it underneath the new deck that they're putting in. So, in 50 years or whenever, once the next person redoes the deck, they'll get a quick little surprise there before they find out that it's plastic.
Well, I used to do something terrible when I was a teenager, and it's funny, but it's an awful thing now looking back what I did. There was a darkened lane where we lived, and cars used to come down on their own at night. It was like it led to a bunch of factories, but it went through some old trees and some old wooded areas, and we used to wear white sheets and stand at the side of the road pointing at the cars just like this as they were coming for a laugh when we were teenagers, like that. That looks pretty cool, my finger like that, right? And the range of reactions would be hilarious. The window would be rolled down and says, "Get out of here, you fucking gobshites." That would be one reaction. Another reaction. Yeah, another reaction would be like some young guys pulling it down and laughing their heads off, and they said, "Your rat is going there for a second." Two, a car going like this, and someone behind the wheel going like blessing themselves.
You got to fuck with them sometimes. It's good.
I know, but like I said, now thinking that was a magical experience, because we took them out of the reality, out of their present reality, even though we weren't just doing a teenage prank.
Yeah, no, you made them question their own reality for a minute.
Actually, yeah.
That's right. Okay. We have a theme going on here. 1,000-year-old boulder in Japan, believed to imprison a demon, just split in half, and everyone is freaking out. If you thought 2020 was bad and then witnessed 2021 and figured it couldn't get any worse, we have some potential bad news for you. A group of Japanese Twitter users created a stir after claiming that a huge volcanic boulder said to have imprisoned a powerful demon was found to be cracked in half, unleashing the demon onto the world. As the legend goes, anyone who comes in contact with the stone will die. The rock is called Sesso Seki, translating to killing stone, and it is believed to be 1,000 years old. For Japanese mythology, the boulder is believed to contain the transformed corpse of Tamamo no Me, a beautiful woman who was part of a secret plot hatched by a feudal warlord to kill Emperor Toba in the 12th century. Her true identity was supposedly an evil 9-tailed fox, and she was killed by a warrior, turning her into a corpse that became the Sesso Seki. The boulder is located near Tokyo and is famous for its sulfurous hot springs. Twitter user who goes by Lillian was the person who claimed they found the rock split in half on March 5th. I came alone to Sesso Seki, where the legend of the 9-tailed fox remains. The big rock in the middle wrapped around with a rope is that. It was supposed to be, but the rock was split in half and the rope was also detached. If it's a manga, it's a pattern that the seal is broken and it's possessed by the 9-tailed fox. And I feel like I've seen something that shouldn't be seen. The tweet immediately went viral, garnering more than 185,000 likes. Then they added, I searched for tweets and looked at the photos that seemed to have been taken within the last 1 to 2 days, but none of the rocks were broken. Now I'm getting really scared. The legend of the boulder is deeply etched into Japanese mythology and was registered as a local historical site in 1957. It was also mentioned in Matsuo Basho's The Narrow Road to the Deep North, and even inspired a no-play, a novel, and an anime film. It is a popular sightseeing spot, but it was the first time people had noted the rock as broken with its rope lying by the side. The superstitious section of Twitter feared the worst. A rational group did some research and claimed the rocks had cracks for years, which possibly allowed rainwater to seep inside, weaken the strength of the boulder until it finally split in two. Masaharu Sugawara, the head of a local volunteer guide group, agreed with the rationalists. It's natural, so it can't be helped, but it's a shame because it's a symbol of the local area. Okay. Many are spooked by the development. One person wrote on Twitter, the Soso Seki, a famous rock in Nasu, Japan, that was said to have imprisoned the evil nine-tailed fox, demoness Tomomo no Me, was found broken in half. After nearly 1,000 years, the demon vixen is presumably once again on the loose. Some said they were looking forward to what was about to happen. Man, imagine all of the mythologies and religion. Japan was right all along. I'm unironically all for this and want to see where this goes because I'm tired of mundane life and want magical, supernatural stuff to happen. Many locals are also convinced that the demon has been unleashed. I can't wait to find what's in store, but let's face it, the last thing we need amidst a potential world war and a pandemic is a demon unleashed on us. Still a tiny bit intrigued, though.
Yeah, I'm spooked too. I take this quite seriously. I'll tell you why. The Japanese, even though they're Shinto Buddhist, Shinto, is that what it is? Buddhist, they're a very nature-based people, and they take this stuff very seriously. This is why they're so good at things like gardening and landscaping and agriculture. A very heavily populated island with not a lot of space to do natural things in. So they have what's natural in Japan is very highly focused within their consciousness. So I take this stuff very seriously. Also, even though it's Shinto Buddhism, it's very similar to kind of paganism in that, like, every tree has a spirit, every stone has a spirit. I used to work in New York with a chap who was son of a Japanese immigrants, and we were talking about this, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, what my parents believe in is exactly the same as the Irish Celtic pagans. The whole thing that even rocks are alive, and they take it very seriously." So yeah, this is part of what's happening in the world right now. We don't get enough. It's not our fault because we don't, but we don't do enough on this show or in general in Paranoia with in 40 and stuff with Eastern things like Eastern mysticism, because we don't get a lot of information in English. But yeah, I take this thing very seriously. I think this is part of the whole shift we're going through, and it's something that it's not a joke to me. This is like a big deal. I understand why people in Japan are upset about it and concerned about it and focused on it, and I am too.
Right now, I would imagine this would be a tremendous augury for them as well, to see that with everything that's going on, and then this stone splitting open, and the rope that was holding it sealed is now broken. And it's interesting. This article, the story actually was recommended to us by Timone's son Escher to use for the show, and he had his own commentary about it, that he was talking about perhaps that the war that's going on right now was as a result of this demon that was released. And I thought, from a 7-year-old, that's some profound information that he brought forward. So it's like, absolutely have to do this story.
Yeah, sure did. And I'll tell you, I can add to that. 2 weeks ago, the Japanese parliament made a speech that they said, well, all the neuroses we have left over from World War II is over. And we're going to start building our military up again to be the predominant military power in the East. And then this rock breaks. So Japan was the Germany of Asia, and they've decided now to build up their military and bring back their very ancient military tradition in the modern age. And so they got serious, and they were actually praised by the European Union and the US government. But so they said, the stigma of World War II, the Rape of Nanking and all that stuff is past us now. We're ready to become a military superpower again. Has this rock splitting got something to do with that?
Oh yeah, and it's just to go back to what I was saying, that return of the warrior masculine is what I'll call it. Just that thing that we can't solve things anymore with diplomacy. There needs to be a real warrior class again, and if the East is doing it, the West can do it as well. And I think that's amazing that Japan is doing that. The Japanese, like you're saying, the Shinto culture is incredibly pagan, and being able to have that as a root that brings forth their own warrior masculine class again is absolutely needed. And something like that can occur over here in the West as well, I would imagine. As we get away from the Abrahamic kind of turn the other cheek thing, and going more towards a classical Western way of doing things. Yeah, we'll have that warrior class rise up again in the West.
Yeah,
no,
well, that's might be happening because Trump, when he was in office, he told the European countries, the USA and NATO is no longer interested in protecting you. You'll have to rebuild. And you have a massive militarization thing now happening in Germany. Germany is now ready to become the dominant military power in this part of the world again. So here we go. The cycles. The cycles. Are we living, like I wrote a book, Walpurgis Night, about the years leading up to World War II and all the kind of mysticism along with the social things that happened. Well, here we are again. On the eve of Hitler's annexation of Austria, when the troops marched in, there was an enormous light phenomenon that appeared all over Europe. Lights were appearing in the sky. It was seen all over Western Europe. That was the beginning of World War II proper in 1938 with the incorporation of Austria back into the Reich. Well, is this the augury for that? The resurrection of the samurai culture.
And just like there was 1919, there was 2020 as the gateway, as that kind of.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was looking at the editorial of Walpurgis Night, and it said 1919 would be the most important year until 2020. Now, I wrote that in 2014. I just had a hunch that 2020 something would happen, and by gosh, was I bang on the money with that one. You can go, if you don't believe me, go open Walpurgis Night right now and read the introduction. I said that 2020 we would see this phenomenal changes that in the world that happened in 1919. It's weird, isn't it? But here we are again. Here we are again.
Yeah. Yeah, and just this growth of military powers again. It's good because it's like that whole idea of not having any military force and having this globalization idea of everybody being reliant on another country to keep going. It's like the sovereignty of nations, and there's more of like a tribal sense of things in that way on a more macrocosmic scale. And also too, it's also very like chapter 3 of the Book of the Law kind of thing. Fortify an island and dung it about with implements in vehicles of war, right? Something kind of like that. It reminds me, everything that's been going on has really been reminding me lately of chapter 3 of the Book of the Law, where I feel like back then in the World War II era, everybody thought that, oh yeah, that's what's going on now, with Britain being the island that was fortified. But I almost think that's not as literal of an island, but an island as a metaphor. And we're there again, finding an island, and I can't quote it exactly, but how the chapter 3 of the Book of the Law starts.
What about the United States that started with Chelsea Manning, the military dare? And now there's all kinds of jokes going around now that the Americans are fighting the Russians. I know it's not true. There'll be fellas wearing high heels and makeup because it's gone all kind of trans, and they have American generals saying things like, waving rainbow flags and stuff like this. Now you could laugh at that, you could be worried about it, but there is a kind of a Dionysian correction going on that America is no longer the policeman of the world, the guy who protects the West, and is retracting into a more feminine aspect, moving over to a kind of a Dionysian thing in an alchemical way at the wedding of the male and female. So America's a country to watch because all this convulsions going on right now, the United States may be going through its alchemical wedding and transforming into something completely different entirely.
Yeah, I like that. That's something I want to keep an eye on. Yeah, but this whole bringing forth that warrior class again is absolutely needed, because all and I know we don't like to talk about politics here. I'll just put my one little grain of politics in there, but just this whole idea of imposing sanctions and stuff that that POTUS is doing right now over with Russia. That this idea that somehow imposing sanctions on another country like that's already self-dependent, self-reliant. It's just a real pussy move. But that's it. That's the extent of what I'm going to say.
Forget about pussy move, but it's also self-destructive, because most of the wheat in the world comes from that part of the world. So, our daily bread is now being cut off because of these sanctions. It's ridiculous. So it's end of politics, but there's always spiritual layers to these developments, and that's what we're about on this channel, and that's what you should be about as well. Finding the spiritual attenuation within these events.
Yep. Yeah, but being able to be a military leader or a leader of a nation or a leader of a people, and having that ability to look after your people first and their safety and their protection and everything, and that's just not being done over here right now. So it's like, yeah, that it was a pussy move, and it was also self-destructive. It was also tremendously weak. It shows a tremendous weakness with the president of the United States, POTUS. So anyway, rant complete.
So we take this thing in Japan very seriously as a major orb. Yeah.
That demon was released.
It's nothing to be brushed aside. There's something. It means something powerful.
Yeah, and Escher hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yep, he's smart.
Yeah. So, having no faith in world leaders, why would we? Protect your own homes, your own thresholds. If the stone is cracked, and I mean, we already knew that there was stuff running around wild out there. Just do what you can to be your own military leader of your own house. Protect your own shit, your own people.
And if you take the news and Strangers the Week in Strangers as a news show, you'll get more real news here to actually help you in your life than you'll ever get off the mainstream, and even alternative news. It's full of lies.
Full of it. Yep. And that's not what we do here.
It's profane beyond belief. Yeah.
Right. So we're the exact mirror image of that, or the opposite of that. So
we're
that's all
here,
out there, but so are we.
We're not here to suck your emotions dry. We're here to fulfill them.
That's right.
And nourish them.
And with that, did you have something else to say?
Say one more thing about this. Yeah, like Timothy was saying there, being the own military of your own home, being the guardian of your own space. There's such a thread, or such a motif that you've touched on a number of times recently, Thomas, about the sacred nature of the home, and you've talked about this in regards to the refugee thing, and just that whole thing. It's like, there for a while, especially here as Americans, there's just that idea of like opening the house up to just anyone, having gigantic parties with casseroles and whatever, all that bullshit. But it's like, now is kind of the time to is to do a little bit of the hermitage, clean that threshold.
That all started, in the magical sense, that all started with these celebrities, homes that are rich and famous, showing you and Hello magazine, and David Beckham and Posh Becks showing you the inside of their home. This was to demolish the sanctity and the sacredness of your threshold.
Right.
Yeah. To make you think you should do the same.
Right. Yeah. Protecting the home, protecting the family, protecting that psychic space, and not just letting it be free and open to everyone and everything. That goes, whether it's on the microcosm of the home or the macrocosm of a universe. we don't want to be letting any other entities through the cracks, so to speak. I've talked about that a number of times, that you mentioned the alien invasion thing, and it's like, yeah, they're not coming over here from the Pleiades or something. They're slipping in the cracks between realities. So it's like, we have to protect our homes, our states, our nations, all that. It's not a big free for all. It's not all one. It's not some John Lennon Imagine type of scenario. That was all created out of that COINTELPRO era of
the hippies,
that whole
hippies.
Yeah.
The Andy Warhol's The Factory. Anyone could come in until someone showed up and shot them.
Yeah, right. But just that idea that we're all one, and that everything, to put down your arms and everything. How much of that channeled information that people get from the Pleiadians and from I'm doing Trump hands, how much of that information that people get from the Pleiadians and stuff like that has been the information of lay down your nuclear weapons, get rid of in your rifles and all of that. And it's like, it's that same kind of propaganda there of well, what happens when a nation or a people or a person lays down their arms and leaves the door wide open? What happens in I have no arms. What happens in nature when that occurs? What happens when something goes undefended? What happens when something when you take and declaw an animal that has claws? Nature puts those things there. and humans are part of nature, and our self-defense apparati are designed as part of nature as well. So all this, all the channeled ET stuff and all that new agey stuff from like the 1950s on until pretty recently, even on YouTube here, like there's so much information out there about trying to end, trying to get people to lay down their weapons and everything. And it's just like, now we're at that point where a lot of that has been done, and where are we because of that? So.
I just remembered a bit of a dream that I had last night. I went to a store that we have here, and they've got big bulk bins, and you can, fill up huge pounds of, bags of however many pounds of whatever you want. I had a dream I was filling up a huge, like 10-pound bag just full of salt for the house. And so you can take that with a grain of salt or a 10-pound bag, but you got to be down for the good of your own realm. So, yeah. All right, Thomas, are you ready for the psychic weather? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I think that's real important to get salt around, like, for ritual work, if you're doing any kind of ritual work like that, to be able to seal a space. But then there's also, there's the physical salt, and then there's the, if you want to use it as a metaphor, being able to be able to draw those lines like that, to be able to draw those boundaries and salt the live feed. Okay. Is there anything going wrong with the live feed? I see, Brett, you said something there. Please just let us know in the stream if there's something going on with the live feed. But no, but yeah, Timothy's dream about getting salt like that. Yeah, we've got to be able to have those boundaries, because it's like, if we want to use that analogy of like whenever you see snail trails around, right, Thomas? Like if you're looking at a place that's covered in the slime from a snail.
The story I could tell you about that. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I somehow ended up with this woman in her house in Cambridgeshire in England, and she was a Wiccan, and she wanted me to stay the night in the place, and I said I don't want to stay because I felt this incredible sense of dread. But what kicked it off was the exterior of the house was covered in snail and slug trails, like Spider-Man's web, like Shelob. And it was a web of evil, and she was up to no good. And I found that later on she was involved in some serious dark occultism. And one of the best things I ever did. I was in a state of this saturation of a very attractive house, a very nice country house, red brick house in the country. I felt the wickedness inside that building beyond belief, and I said, I want to go, I want to leave. And it was like that. I want to go, I want to leave. And she looked at me like that, in shock. And I said, no, I don't want to stay here. I'm gone. And it was the slug trails on the outside, glinting in the moonlight, that made me like that set off my psychic alarm bells. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Demons and snail trails, demons and slug.
Well, it was like that scene in the Lord of the Rings, the first movie, where the hobbits are hiding under the tree, and the ring wraith comes over to them, and as he's leaning over, all the weevils and insects come out of the ground, and all the parasites. It was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like what can't cross a salt barrier? A snail, right? A slug. So yeah. that symbol, and any slimy thing can't handle the salt. So it's like, yeah, we can have our physical boundaries with salt, but then there's also the symbolic salt boundaries there that we don't let slugs and snails and stuff past. Being able to keep those barriers there, whether it's a physical barrier, a physical boundary, or psychic boundaries, a psychic firewall, if you will. Being able to keep those slimy influences out of our lives. But yeah, just really good points you've been having recently, Thomas, about the sanctity of the home. Like that can't be any more important. I've just been seeing that motif everywhere lately, not just with your shows, but we had one on earlier that something about that came up. So it's like that motif is reoccurring everywhere right now, like a fractal. So, and I imagine that, that's like you talk about so much, Thomas, where, we'll start talking about certain motifs, certain memes and tropes that go through the zeitgeist, so to speak. And right now that's one of them. It's just, I've noticed it whenever you started talking about that, like a week ago, I think it was a week ago, probably. And that's just repeating itself everywhere. And that right about that time, I opened up my Facebook feed, and I've got like a number of rail fan groups that I'm part of for train nerd stuff here in North America. And one of the first photo that was up there was a really beautiful photo of a sunset and a train track. And then this snail that was right there on the rails, he was just perched there, just big old gigantic snail with his little eyes up and everything. And he was coming down the tracks with like a sunset behind him, or sunrise. Yeah. Behold. Yeah. But very slow moving, slimy creature down the train tracks heading from, I guess, west to east. I don't know, but it was interesting. It was a strange augury to open up and see that. And then you talking about protecting the home and, things being able to cross over that salt threshold, and snails and slugs being kind of a symbol of demonic forces inhabiting a place. Snail trails. Yeah. So that was a tangent to go off on while you needed to take a break there for a moment. But do you feel like the psychic weather right now, Thomas?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Hello, the psychic weather this week is a short and sweet one, but an important one. Beware the dogmatic Renfielders or Renfielding. Anyone who seems to have a dogmatic attitude, whether it be a religious or a political one, seems to be very easily rattled right now and will suddenly go into the most psychotic defense of their assumptions, belief, inclinations, religion, or anything else, politics. Do not provoke these types. This is an energy feeding device designed to bring you into arguments, bring you into confrontation. Ignore, put up the wall, let the Renfield do its thing and go. That's the weekend psychic weather. That's it.
Is it bad? Is it great? Are you happy? Are you irate? The weekend psychic weather.
Excellent. Yeah. I like the short and sweet ones. Last week is don't do Gollum shit. This week, don't fuck with people who do Gollum shit.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're any way dogmatic or fanatical, stay the hell away from them, because they're just looking for trouble. And they're being fed by a force in their subconsciousness that they've no control over.
Oh, excellent.
Don't throw gasoline on the fire.
Yep. Just take some space. Do what you got to do. Yeah. No making napalm. Okay. Loch Ness Monster record keeper, not surprised there's been no sightings in 2022, but asks the public to keep vigilant. Gary Campbell, keeper of the official Loch Ness Monster Register, has recorded more than 1,136 alleged sightings of Nessie over the past 25 years. The keeper of the official Loch Ness Monster Register says he's not surprised there haven't been any official sightings of the monster this year, despite a bumper year in 2021. Inverness-based Gary Campbell, who has recorded more than 1,136 alleged sightings of Nessie over the past 26 years, stated that the start of the year at the end of winter is usually a quiet time for the monster. He explained there tends to be very few people around at this time of year, and the hours of daylight are much shorter, meaning there's less daylight available for people to watch the surface of the loch. He added that doesn't mean they haven't had any reports in 2022. Far from it. But much like the majority of claimed sightings, if they are explainable, they do not make it onto the register. There have been a few reports sent to us from the webcam, he added, but we've been able to explain them. After a great year last year with 16 official sightings of the Loch Ness Monster, Gary admits he's expecting more physical sightings in 2022 as opposed to ones taken from the webcam. He said, "We never know from year to year how it will go, but if tourist numbers increase as COVID abates, then hopefully there will be more from people who are physically at the loch." Should you be lucky enough to spot the elusive monster, Gary explained that they should submit their sightings to the website, www.lochnesssightings.com, where if it can't be explained, it will be officially registered. Over the course of the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns, there was a growth in sightings on the webcam, which sits close to the banks of the loch. The likes of American monster spotter Kaylin Wangle and experienced Nessie hunter Irishman Eoin O'Fadigan have had some very intriguing digital sightings. When asked about the possibility of more being placed all year round from different vantages on the loch, Gary responded, "There has been a lot of discussion about this, but someone would have to pay for it. There are also still broadband connectivity issues at the loch, which may hinder such efforts. Over the years, there have been theories of the Loch Ness Monster being everything from a giant sturgeon to large eels and even a giant squid. The record keeper, though, despite being interested in the subject for over a quarter of a century since his own sighting of the beast ignited his passion for Nessie, still isn't sure what he believes it to be. I really don't know what the truth is, but having become interested in this 26 years ago when I saw something in the loch, I'd very much like an answer. In practical terms, I'd say it has to be an aquatic creature that doesn't need to come to the surface to breathe, and it would have to be able to live in fresh water. This narrows the options. In terms of recent sightings, the best advance has been the fact that most people now have a high-definition video camera in their pockets as part of their phone. This has meant that there is more and more picture video evidence being captured, which both helps with the search and also, conversely, helps give explanations for most of what people are seeing. You can follow the most recent official sightings and learn more about the monster and the loch it calls home from here at that website, the Loch Ness Monster or LochNessSightings.com.
You guys are amazing because it's like the synchronicities just fly off the scale when we're doing this show.
That's what we
I
do.
swear to God, everybody at home, I have not heard what these stories are. Timony picks them and Jason has casually seen them, but I have no knowledge of what's coming up because I deliberately told them I don't want to know. Okay. Now, a friend of mine sent me a thread on Telegram of some Abrahamic knuckle scraper who was going after me here in Ireland. And he said, one of the most ridiculous things I ever said was that Crowley created the Loch Ness Monster. I said, well, I didn't say he did. I said, that's my theory. Okay, that's it. I didn't say it's a fact. And he says, St. Columkill, he banished the monster from the lake. Nah, let me tell you the truth about that one. St. Columkill or St. Columba banished a serpent from the River Ness, not Loch Ness, at the estuary leading to many, many miles away in whatever it was, 5 something. Okay. So it wasn't Loch Ness where St. Columkill, St. Columba was. It was not there. And also, like St. Patrick and the snakes, it was a metaphor for banishing the Druids because he had converted the local pagan chieftain with a bag of money, probably. Okay, so that's out of the way. Anyone who says St. Columba or St. Columkill was the first to report the Loch Ness Monster is bullshit because it was the Ness River, many, many miles away at the North Sea and not Loch Ness. The sightings of the Loch Ness Monster only began after Crowley did the Abimelech and the Mage ritual at Boleskine House. Okay. My theory is, and I think it's a good one, is he brought, because of the trouble within the Golden Dawn and he had to suddenly scarper back to McGregor's Mathers and the rest of them, he left the ritual unfinished. He brought through some elementals and they were trapped in the water of the lake, okay? Now, those of you who are watching this show tonight, afterwards you're going to see the Gary Vasey interview symposium we did with the chap, and he talked about quite rightly that people have these paranormal experiences in states of anxiety. Okay, now the reason why there's been not many sightings is because Scotland is at a crappy lockdown. They had the police arresting people not until very recently at tourist and beauty spots in Scotland for breaking the limits. People in Scotland have also seemed to be very frightened of the ping pong virus and seem to be not wanting the tourism of Scottish people being tourists in Scotland has really collapsed. So it's not surprising because there's less sightings because people haven't been to the lake, the tourists in general, not just Scottish ones. Secondly, without humans going to the lake, they're not bringing their emotional state that will bring this thing into manifestation. This is why there's no clear photographs of it. It isn't actually an animal that's there. It's a disturbance in the field that somehow brings itself through water. Okay, water is the medium that this thing exists in. And when I would guarantee a test that somebody needs to do, a research program that someone needs to do, is to not only interview Loch Ness witnesses who saw the thing and even filmed it. Remember, they're filming a disturbance in the field. That's why when you zoom in, you see nothing. Okay. Because it's not there. It's literally a disturbance in the matrix. Ask them, what was your emotional state when you saw the monster. And they'll say, well, I was on holidays, but I was a bit nervous. I was afraid I was going to be laid off. Oh, my girlfriend just left me. My husband ran off for another woman. I wasn't feeling the best. Someone said, let's go to the Equinox for a holiday. I would like to know from now on, you 40 folks, you paranormal investigators, ask the people who have these witnesses, UFOs, monsters, Bigfoot, the lot, what was your emotional state at the time? Were you anxious, hurt, upset, depressed? And when this thing happened, and I guarantee you will find that they were in a heightened emotional state. So it's not surprising there hasn't been many sightings this year, just because there hasn't been many people in a heightened emotional state visiting the lake.
Bang on. I can tell you most of my paranormal experiences have always been under some sort of state of duress. Yeah, I won't really go into it, but there's been a lot lately. But we're good. We're good. Until we're not.
Yeah, agreed. It's not always catalytic exteriorization, but there are things like that whatever it does. Thomas, you use the word attenuation quite a bit. And it's like if it does that, where it attenuates your attention down, so it's so single pointed. It's like, yeah, you're creating that conduit within where that one pointed awareness can cause things like this to occur, especially if one's more inclined towards the mystical, the magical, the occult side of things. You know, there are a lot of normies out there who this stuff is so far beyond their level of havingness. But you know, people like us, when we have our awareness attenuated and just focused in, just focused, whether it's through meditation or anything like Gary was talking about with dowsing, of getting that single pointed awareness. But yes, fear can cause that single pointed awareness, just like any way of, you know, whether it's, you know, the way either Pete Carroll, Ray Sherwin, or anybody talks about charging a sigil. Yeah, another way of doing it is, you know, through fear, those moments of incredible anxiety, or, you know, when a near death experience kind of thing. There's nothing like that just brings your awareness and just focuses it in like that, as opposed to times when your attention is dispersed out into many different directions. You know, these things occur. You know, if Crowley was doing the Abramelin operation there, the Abramelin the mage, and he was just one pointed awareness there, and any kind of elemental force that was around him, not even from within him, but anything there in the area on top, you know, within the land he was on, could have just come through that. And if there's a ritual left partway open, yeah, it could have kept going until the ritual closed itself off. And, you know, here they are again, the people doing tremendous work over there at Boleskine House, restoring it right now, kind of bookending it a little bit again. And I'd imagine there's going to just be tremendous Crowleyan synchronicities coming now that Boleskine House is being rebuilt by those lovely folks over there.
Well, the proof of that is, I said before they began that restoration program, I said that the Loch Ness sightings of the monster would be off the scale as the house is being restored, and it was in 2018 and 2019. Remember, they couldn't have gone there in 2020 to do the work because of the lockdowns in Scotland. Also, you're not going to see them this winter because it's absolutely cold and freezing up there. It's not a place to be working, doing construction in the winter. So that will be slowed down. I will make a prediction here that we will start seeing many Loch Ness monster sightings starting in this summer. It will come back with a bang.
I like it.
All right. Okay, here we go. Anomaly hunter spots human leg on Mars. An anomaly hunter scouring NASA images for odd items of interest spotted a particularly weird object that he has likened to a human leg sticking out of the surface of Mars. The peculiar find was made by UFO researcher Scott Waring as he was examining a photo from the Red Planet that was captured by the space agency's Curiosity rover last month. Amid the otherwise barren Martian landscape, a curious dark form can be seen emerging from the ground. The oddity, Waring marveled, is strikingly similar in shape to a human-like leg. Although he has documented all manner of strange and unusual objects in images from the space agency over the years, the seasoned anomaly hunter conceded that the potential appendage was not typically what you would expect in a Mars photo. That said, he argued that NASA has been keeping mum about all of these alien artifacts on Mars, so they must be real. As such, Waring surmised that the leg is probably part of a statue rather than being organic in nature, since such material is unlikely to have survived the harsh environment of the red planet for any lengthy period of time. If the theorized statue was created to scale, Waring postulated that the depicted Martian was approximately 4 feet tall, which is actually in keeping with accounts of individuals who claim to have encountered extraterrestrial visitors. Of course, skeptical observers will say the puzzling object is not really the remnants of a statue honoring some hero from the red planet's distant past, and in fact is most likely just a rock that looks like a leg due to pareidolia. With that in mind, what's your take on the latest Martian anomaly?
Well,
Yeah,
the
I love at
story.
the end of
The story, Jason. Well, the story at the beginning of the gorge, the Columbia Gorge, was how to report paranormal stuff. This story is how not to do it. Sorry, Jason. Go ahead.
right. I like at the very end there about it. How do they put it about it? If it were some sort of remnants of a statue of a Martian hero, I like that one. I like that a lot. Like, and you know, you all know my fucking bullshit about space stuff, where it's like, in my opinion, you know, Mars and Venus, and my professional opinion, yes, my bullshit is that, you know, these were inhabited by people that didn't look too dissimilar to us not that long ago. And if we were to go there and comb through those through the wreckage there, we'd find maybe a leg from a statue sticking up like that, and you know, maybe a Walmart or something there too. But like, again, in my opinion, these planets were inhabited before the last big cataclysm that wiped out Earth throughout most of the inner planets and everything, and you know, that life probably began here again on Earth, or everything stayed here on Earth. But I just think this is really cool that stuff like this is starting to show up there on Mars. I know there was a face on Mars, which could be some sort of megalith thing, but to me, that was just, you know, perhaps shadows and somebody looking for something. And maybe there is a face on Mars, but I would imagine there are all kinds of, I mean, what was it? Was it Buzz Aldrin that said that there are a monolith on Iapetus? Is either Iapetus or Yo talks about, Iopan, one of those things, Io. On one of those on one of those moons, that there was some sort of monolith or megalith, and just like the monolith in 2001: A Space Odyssey, I would imagine there's stuff out there like that. And I know there's been remote viewing studies done. I've had dreams of being on Mars before, at least being in some sort of place with a red sky. I've had a number of dreams like that before, and you know, to me, it seems like, you know, something like Stranger in a Strange Land or something to that extent, you know, isn't too far. Isn't too far-fetched. And I know that we've got a lot of philosophy here about the idea of life not being able to be untethered from the core of the planet, but imagine, you know, the same thing could be said for like a Martian consciousness or a lunar consciousness, that if someone born on the moon or someone born on Mars wouldn't be able to physically leave. But then you look at Crowley's book Moonchild, and doing a working to impregnate to bring forward an entity from the moon, a lunar entity, and bringing it into the fetus of a pregnant woman and creating a moonchild like that. That might be one way of bringing about an entity from Mars or an entity from Venus, is somehow, you know, doing a Venusian or a Martian ritual or a lunar ritual, like they did at the what do they call it, the butterfly net there in Moonchild in Italy, where the ritual took place. Doing something like that, where the pregnant woman is sent there, and rather than a human entity attaching itself to that fetus, a lunar entity or a Martian entity. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here, but that idea that there once was a civilization on Mars, and to me, that's my bullshit. I'm sticking with it.
Well, being of shall we say, a vintage above you guys, okay, gather around, and Uncle Thomas is going to tell you a story. Okay, you're gonna like this one. When Uncle Thomas was a young lad living on the north side of Dublin, there was a TV show that was shown live on every European station one night, and it was called Situation 4 or something like that. And it was a mock documentary that was put out as a hoax, discussing how all these people, these scientists, had all mysteriously vanished. And the reason was that the Viking lander, the first Martian lander that landed in the early 70s, had seen life on Mars. And these scientists had all seen it. And the mockumentary, was and if you're watching now, the acting is horrible. But anyway, the mockument, I believed it as an 11-year-old or what it was. I absolutely totally believed watching this thing. And my poor mother was like, our eyes were bugging out of her head. She was terrorized that they were killing all the scientists they were pretend interviews with the parents of the scientists working on the Viking project in England, who had seen these videos and had all been mysteriously vanished. They disappeared. And they were told they were moving to Australia. Their families never heard from ever again. And the documentary's theory was that these families were trying to find out what happened to their son or daughter who was a scientist or an engineer who had worked in the British part of NASA, whatever, or this European Space Agency that had discovered that there was life on Mars. And at the end of the documentary, they showed some footage that had been leaked from someone in NASA of what had happened really. And it showed like, it was stupid when you think about it now, but it showed like, I had guys doing American accents going, my God, what is that? And something is moving towards, like it's like walking towards the camera or something. And then it goes beep, blank screen, right? And then the show ends. Well, it terrorized me as a child. It absolutely traumatized me, okay? And my mother as well was traumatized by it as well. The next day, all the newspapers were filled with stories of, there was an experimental TV broadcast last night that was shown all over Europe with that to have people believe that life was discovered on Mars. And then all the scientists who saw it were all murdered to stop it from happening. It was a mockudrama, mockumentary kind of thing. I often thought, why did they put that thing out there? Why? Not only, that would be weird enough if, say, just one TV channel did it, but why was it simultaneously broadcast on every European network at the same time that night? So that always stuck with me, the strangeness of that. Alex Gerns, who used to run... what was the name? What was the name? He was like a paranormal video maker, speaker. He had a fascination with that documentary. The man died of cancer recently. And me and him, we used to get together in England. We used to always talk about the same thing. He was the same age as me, a bit older. And we talked about why did they do that to us when we were kids? What was that about? Now, I would have been the type to say, like, before Jason, I would have been the type to say, yeah, I don't know what to make of this life on Mars things. But this Curiosity rover thing has been deliberately leaking out things, not just this, but things that look like they've been engineered or machined in a machine, and all other kinds of weird anomalies to suggest that Mars, we're looking at the artifacts of an ancient destroyed civilization on Mars. Now, that thing that's supposed to be a leg, that could be a fossilized tree trunk. It could be part of a piece of machinery. It just looks like a leg because it's the right proportions and everything. It's, the simulacrum thing of it. But more and more, I'm down with Jason. Because there's too much going on. There's too much. And I'm now thinking that Viking, when it landed in the 1970s, saw this shit too as well. And they hid it. But they put that documentary out on European Broadcasting Network on the same time every night to test the public's reaction, to see, remember, life in Europe was very different than it was in America. We were on, the Soviet Union was just next door. We were ready for World War III, but we were raised believing that Russian tanks were going to come through Berlin at any moment. We were in a heightened state anyway. Very different than how you guys lived in America back then. And it was almost like a gigantic test of the public to see, the CIA and the European spy agencies got together and said, let's test it out in Europe, because they're already fucked up anyway, because they all think they're going to be dead in a second. And that thing, I think it's called Situation 4, Element 4. Look it up. Just say 1970s. Someone put it in the comments. Fake Martian scientist murder documentary. I now think that the Viking lander did see things. This thing was a test to see how the public would react. And the Curiosity rover, with its high speed. Do you remember, you're talking about never a straight answer from NASA. They're not lying. They do send those things to those planets, right? But when Viking landed, they tinted the sky all red because it was a red planet. Mars is only red from like a distance. And then the real photographs started coming through from later landers and showed that the sky was very similar to Earth. and it actually looked like some parts of Afghanistan or the west of Ireland, like the Burren, a kind of a rocky landscape. And very similar. And then we find out that the Americans were testing their rovers in places like the Burren in Ireland and in Afghanistan because it looked like it had a similar rock formation to these places on Earth, and also in Antarctica. And here we go now, getting all the stuff leaked in the last few years. Is this a Martian walking stick? Is this a Martian football? Is this a Martian computer? And I'm telling you, I'm seeing there's so many of those things. They've clearly been machined. I absolutely am now firmly down with the idea that there was an ancient civilization on Mars. It built stuff. Something happened. It's not there now. But just like if we had a cataclysm, like that movie Don't Look Up, and you see the end of it where the comet hits Earth, you see the cell phones all floating around and all the little bits of shit floating around before they land back on Earth. Maybe something like that happened to Mars. And what we're looking at is the remnants of an advanced civilization that was blown to bits or something like that.
Yeah, something nuclear or something H-bomb like
Yeah.
could occur. And I would imagine that, I mean, I know there's Cliff High references the channel Mars Anomalies on YouTube. And I've watched a few of his videos, and some of it, the Mars Anomaly stuff and the Moon Anomaly, yeah, it's okay. But I would imagine a lot of the stuff that, that, like you're saying, there's a lot of simulacra that can be seen. Like this thing, I don't know. That's probably just a something. It's probably not. It's probably
not a fossilized tree.
Yeah, right. But which is still cool. But there's got to be more to it. And there's probably reels of imagery that have come back that are totally top secret at the highest security clearance level, being able to be seen, that presidents and people like that don't even get to see it, where there actually are structures and things. I would imagine there's information like that out there, that there are photographs.
Well,
like
the face on Mars and Richard Hoagland and all this stuff. Yeah, there's a huge amount of extrapolation there. And Carl Sagan wrote about it in his book, Our Demon Haunted World. And he was Carl Sagan, being a proper scientist, was always very fair about this stuff. And NASA's the Gothard Space Lab even allowed Richard Hoagland to present the lecture on the Martian thing there. And I used to have the DVD. And I have to say, it goes off too much on tangents. A lot of these fellas do, like Cliff High sometimes go off on tangents that are difficult to follow. But it is amazing to me that the rovers, the orbital spacecraft around Mars, always make an excuse not to photograph the face on Mars. They say something like, well, it only appears like this because the light was in a certain position, and it'll never appear like that ever again. But then where's the new photographs? I don't see them. We're told, we didn't bother, or we took a picture of it, there's nothing to see. Where are the photographs? Where are they? And that thing is definitely a five-sided pyramid. There's no doubt about it, the thing near it. And there's also things that look very similar to some of the megalithic stuff you see here on Earth. So like cursuses and things like that, the U-shaped things. I'm sorry, Mars is a Pandora's box of stuff that is being hidden from us. I'm convinced of it. And they knew right back as far as Viking. What about Lowell and the canals on Mars? This guy was filming the canals on Mars. There's a very good video about it here on the channel, I think, if you look down. And they were he was doing complex drawings, not just Lowell, but artists all over the world, of a canal system on Mars. And suddenly, it never existed. It never existed.
Yep. And it's like, that reminds me of the canal. I showed that remote viewing study after the Week in Strange last week of the canals over there around the Gulf, like we were talking about with the story that Timony found of the civilization off the coast of Louisiana. And again, like the remote viewer did the thing where there was these canal builders that lived here on Earth. I forgot what I'll have to go back and watch that video again, but that same kind of thing. I'd imagine it could have been, an interplanetary civilization. Like if there's an Atlantean times, for instance, like traveling back and forth between Mars and Earth probably was a pretty mundane thing to do.
Yep.
And there'd be very similar cultures there, and maybe now maybe Mars is not inhabitable anymore, but life started up again here on Earth. And
it's a funny synchronicity that the very first record I ever bought was "Life on Mars" by David Bowie.
Yeah, right. I was going to bring that one up.
Now I'm at this stage in my life, I am starting to believe there is life on Mars. It took me this long to get here. But like that's true to anyone who was a kid in the 70s or even an adult in the mid 70s or saw it. I was like 11 or something, or maybe younger, 9. It terrorized me. Look it up. It's called Situation 4, something like that. Check it out.
Yeah, I'll have to find that one. Yeah. Yep, share it to the group, and then that remote viewing study, and then the Martian canals. We'll link that down below. But this is all just fascinating stuff. This is where I really find my interest, is in this and ancient civilizations, and how there probably was an ancient civilization, starfaring, or at least planetary faring, at least had some sort of technology to transport back and forth, whether it was some sort of like Stargate technology or something, being able to go through a portal and end up someplace else, or if they were using ships or something. And I tend to wonder about Uma and the Black Knight and Satellite, if those are just leftovers, like those the container ships that we have going around that are remotely driven. They don't have a crew on them. I wonder if Uma is something like that, from like their equivalent of wish.com, and it's full of lingerie and bullshit right now from wish.com, from back in the Atlantean era.
If you look into like Velikovsky's catastrophism, When Worlds Collide, there's a film from the 1950s called When Worlds Collide, and it's about how a planet is about to destroy Earth, but they build a spaceship so enough people can fly to the new planet and survive. And maybe the Martians, if you factor in Velikovsky's theory that Venus was between Mars and Jupiter and swung into the inner atmosphere, into the inner solar system, causing catastrophes on Earth, but also wiping out the atmosphere on Mars. It's quite possible if there was an advanced civilization, they jumped onto Venus, piggybacked on it, and then when they got to Earth, flew their spaceships. Now, this is wild speculation, I know, but this, if you were to put these things into like context of how they could have done it, Venus, they're aware of Venus. Their Venus is flying out of its orbit. It's coming into Mars, fly to Venus, stay there for a bit, comes to Earth, piggyback onto Earth. Venus ends up between Earth and Mercury.
Yeah, it's all attainable. It's all stuff that could be done, especially when you talk about, if someone's a navigator type and they're looking at it from a navigational perspective like that. Yeah. But do you have any thoughts about this one? No. Yeah, but I do want to say that, like, if anybody out there, if anybody of these remote viewing groups it has people that can remote view these places, I think these are things worth remote viewing. Like, find targets and have your remote viewers not know what the target is, and have them, be double blind, triple blind tests, where some of them you're giving them a Polaroid picture of your dishwasher, and then, someone else you're giving them, an image from Mars, and have these studies done, and, make sure someone's remote viewing your dishwasher, and then make sure someone's remote viewing Mars. So you see, okay, the control got the dishwasher right, and they also got Mars right.
We'll be recruiting soon.
And there's a reason why Curiosity rover photographs are being brought to our attention. They're slowly preparing us for the, there's a whole vested interest here in the religion. Like, religions don't even want to accept that the megaliths are older than the Bible. So to say that life appeared on other planets, come on. We're up against some serious forces here, from the Vatican to like mainstream academia.
Yep. Lame Sage says Dick Allgaier does some great stuff. Oh yeah, Dick Allgaier and Courtney Brown and Aziz Brown. They've got some good stuff over there on YouTube. I know Aziz has a good series, who's Courtney Brown's son. Aziz does a really good job teaching people how to remote view. If you're just interested in looking it up, just go over there on YouTube. Courtney Brown, or I think it's I forgot what their channel is, but you can just put their names in, and they've got some great stuff. If you want to learn about what remote viewing is, if you've never heard of it before, just go over to YouTube. You can find some cool stuff. Ingo Swann and that whole era of people. It was all developed developed as a technology and patented by the CIA back in mid 20th century, from people who had kind of natural abilities to do this. And then, a couple groups out there with developed it a little bit farther, and then the CIA got their hands on it and used it for Project Stargate. So all this stuff has been used and is being used and will be used. And so it'd be great if some people did some remote viewing of Mars, not just the photos that are kicked back from, was it Curiosity? Is that what's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would sometimes, maybe a photo we get back is from Afghanistan and somebody remote views Afghanistan. But I think that there are remote viewers out there who could remote view Mars specifically, have that as the target. Just, click, go, 10,000 years ago on Mars. And then what do you see? That kind of thing. There are people out there that can do remote viewing like that.
Yeah, there's also some fake things on the internet. Some flat earthers posted a picture of the Burren in the west of Ireland, and they had made it red to make it look like Mars. It says, this is a photograph taken by NASA, and this is a place in Ireland. They had faked it. And I was talking to some guy from the US recently that went out there, and it's funny he said this. I said, "What? So what did you think of that part of Ireland?" He goes, "It fucking looks like Mars." That was his first reaction. It's like fucking Mars. It's like what it looks like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they do send those rovers there. They are going to Mars. The planet does exist. It's this kind of thing. But my God, I think I often wonder if things like the flat Earth and the belief that there's no planets out there, they're just a firmament. I often wonder if that's been fed by the intelligence services because they don't want us to know the real shit of what the origins of the human race actually is.
Yep.
Think beyond the box, Abrahamic.
Yeah, they're trying to keep space from us, is what Timony says. And then somebody, Ronan says the thing about Antarctica, about information being released there. And yes, I would imagine we're going to find some cool stuff about Atlantean, what we'll call Atlantean civilization down there in Antarctica that's just been frozen over. I'm real excited to see what we discover down there in Antarctica. And I go along with what Cliff believes on this, that it's not going to be them, the establishment releasing stuff. It's going to be normal, everyday people like you. Yeah, it's going to be people like Brad Olson. It's going to be people like us. It's going to be, Thomas Sheridan, Timony Wild, and Jason Roba taking trips. Thomas, you got. Yeah.
They lied to us about so many of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
They told us that ghosts were the departed spirits of the dead. We now know that's bullshit, right?
Yeah, bullshit.
We know that's
bullshit.
They told us that aliens were spacemen from outer space. We now know that's bullshit, right? So, those of you who jump on things like the flat Earth, and these things that take off overnight, you're probably being fed the bullshit to distract you from what's really going on up there. Do you ever think about that one? Do you ever think about that one?
Nope.
And the moon landing hoax could be the whole thing to distract from the fact that those motherfuckers saw shit on the moon that they can't explain or they can't talk about. Remember Alan Shepard, one of the first men in space, said that he saw critters outside the Gemini capsule. I think it was Gemini Mercury. Outside the capsule. Gemini. A word he used was critters. He saw living creatures in space. And that was all written out because though he said that. Always be very careful of these fads and trends that come along, because often it's the Jesuits or the CIA or MI6 or all the others are trying to steer you off into bullshit land. So you don't know, just like Gary Vasey said tonight, the Dark Brothers or whatever they are, the cabal, don't want you to steer the profane off into bullshit land, while the rest of us who can think beyond the alternative is often a lie. It's the truth lies somewhere between the alternative and the mainstream, and in there you find clues to send you in the right direction.
So stick with us. Because we won't steer you into bullshit land.
Yeah.
We'll never blow shit up your ass.
Yeah. And remember, this is a conversation we're all having. If we're wrong, we're wrong. But what we're doing out there is saying, it's not this, it may not be that, but it may be something else. That's it.
And that's what we do on The Week in Strange. And that's what we do on Beyond Room 313. And there'll be much more of this to come.
Yep.
And I was going to say about Antarctica, there's just something incredibly Lovecraftian about it, Beyond the Mountains of Madness kind of thing. What's going to come out of Antarctica? And it will be people going down there like not Gary Vasey. Maybe he'll go too, but Brad Olson.
They probably already found the megaliths in ancient cities.
Yeah.
I consider Lovecraft a remote viewer, and his story, which is his longest story, at the Mountains of Madness, was basically him remote viewing what's really in Antarctica. So go out and read or get the audio file of At the Mountains of Madness if you want to know what's down there. Right. Lovecraft was right about just about everything else.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, I think that's a wrap on another fantastic episode. Was that 35?
Yep.
We're cruising right along here.
You get your money's worth with us, Punch.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thank you again so much for all of your input and your comments and participating and all that. The thumbs up brigade was awesome. We'll definitely send that over to old boy over there and show him how interested we are. And I'm sure we'll get him on the show. Thomas, thank you again. Always wonderful to see your beautiful face.
Sanguine gnosis, you gorgeous motherfuckers.
Love y'all. Catch you next week.